And we're back. Jbone brought a beer for us to try out. You want to tell us what we got here?
It's from Founders Brewery, keeping it local as usual. But right above the KBS branding, it says highly acclaimed. So I had never had it. I know some people on our team had to have because we're Founders guys. But it's a flavored stout, aged in a bourbon barrel. Got a little coffee flavor.
I've had one before, but they're usually limited edition. They're not as easy to get, and they're like $20 for a 4-pack.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, they really throw the cost at you with this one, but it's expensive beer to produce too. I mean, it's a barrel aged beer, so there's a whole step right there. That's something you can only get for a little bit, so the ingredients may be hard to come by or pricey or both.
I mean, and it's 12%. So.
Heavy hitter times 10.
Yeah. It's my first time having one, man. Thank you for
sweat.
bringing it, dude.
Capone said Chicago is a beer town. You know, talk about the beer wars. They have a
We were right at the point in the
beer.
story of the beer wars. Like, I'd fucking shoot Jaime Weiss over some shit like this.
When we left off, the beer wars had kicked off. The South Side gang took out Deon O'Banion, and then the North Side gang retaliated by going to war with the South Side gang, as well as the Jenna brothers. Now, Jaime Weiss, like I said, was the only guy that Al Capone was ever reported to be afraid of. He was Catholic. He always had a Bible and a rosary on him. And he suffered from migraines, so he was always, like, irritated. Deon O'Banion was, like, his mentor, so he gets killed, and he's like, all right, it's on. Let's go to war. On January 24th, 1925, while returning home from a shopping trip with his wife, Johnny Torrio was shot several times by Northside gangsters and left for dead. Now, Johnny Torrio lived. He was shot up real bad. He was shot in his neck and his chest and his arm. Like, he was real fucked up. They say that they tried to finish him off and then the gum jammed. And that's the only reason he actually lived. But he's fucked up pretty bad. But anyways, he decides he's rich. He's 42. And now he's all fucked up. And he says, you know what? I'm done.
Riding off into the sunset.
This was the biggest mistake of my career, was given the go-ahead on this war.
Go to war, they said. It'll be cool, they said. Jaime Weiss is a goddamn lunatic. This is fucking terrible. So, at the age of 42, he decides to retire, and he hands off all the operations to 26-year-old Al Capone.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
You're the head of the outfit. It's the mid-prohibition. It's becoming what it is. You're the head of the mob world, and you're 26.
Al Capone takes over as mob boss. Now, he was also an inclusive gangster. He didn't care who you were from. He didn't believe in making guys. He didn't think you had to be Italian. Jake Guzik was one of his best dudes. He worked with the American Boys. He loved, Killer Burke's group. So he would work with anybody. But he had inherited the Italian gang. It's what they built. But he was so not into the Italian only thing that at one point he said, I'm not Italian, I'm from Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're good at being a psycho, we need your purple pants ass, Joker. Come on over here.
Al Capone sets up his base of operations at the Hawthorne Hotel, which would be his standard operating procedure most of his life, is find a spot and build a base there. So he set up in the Hawthorne Hotel in Cicero. He had a small army of security and enforcers, but he leaned heavily on two young Sicilians, Machine Gun Jack McGurn and Tony Accardo.
Okay.
So early in his leadership, he was a young guy. So he found these two kids. He thought,
I see a lot of me in you.
Him and Jack McGurn were real tight. So they both liked to golf. They had golf together. Jack McGurn was like his brother. Like, that was his closest, his number one guy. And then Tony Accardo came up under Jack McGurn. So when Al gets made boss and he's like, hey, we need more guys. You know anybody? He's like, yeah,
I know a guy.
I know a guy. I got a guy, Tony
got
Accardo.
a fucking guy over here.
Him and Jack McGurn, the other thing they had in common, they both like tailored suits and flashy suits. So they would spend their whole fucking day together just getting suits done and fucking golfing
They were like
and dicking around and shit.
They were like Snorky in-laws.
It's funny when you said that. I envisioned like a little scene, like them like walking into a suit store together, like giving each other high fives, all excited.
But I love
like,
the way you have other commonalities though. Like, hey, they both like golf. They both like silky ass fucking suits. They both don't mind fucking whacking a motherfucker's head in with a tire iron if you're killing from the heart. If it's for a good cause. So
They're both from Brooklyn. Like, they just keep getting weaker, but like,
yeah.
we both like suits. Well, yeah, we're gangsters, dude. Of course we like suits.
Both hit a mean baseball back in the day, motherfucker.
So he brings up a lot of young guys underneath them. The guys who grow up, they would end up being fucking powerhouses. Although Al was tutored in Torrio's business sense, he had a willingness to commit violence at a rate that Torrio always stayed away from. But this kind of also helped him grow the business more.
You're
Fuck
mixing
'em.
both worlds.
We'll just make all the money.
Yeah, why do we got to share the money? Like, that never made sense. We're sharing the money? No, we're not
I'll
gonna share them.
CEO like Johnny T, like Johnny Torrio, but I'll fucking brute like fucking Machine Gun Kelly. Are we cool?
So he starts fucking bombing businesses and shooting up people on the street at an alarming rate. So Chicago during the Prohibition era was the fucking Wild West. On April 27th, 1926, an assistant state's attorney, he was a 26-year-old wonder kid named William McSwiggan. He was born and raised in Cicero, goes to college, gets a law degree and shit, state's attorney. But he had grew up with these two guys, James Doherty and Todd Red Duffy, who were part of the West Side O'Donnell gang. So he was actually out with his family, and he sees a couple of his boys, and he's like, hey, we're going to go out get some drinks and shit. And he goes out bar hopping with these guys, and at some point, they see Miles O'Donnell, a Capone rival, and then they're just going back about their partying and shit. Well, word got back to Capone that the O'Donnells were out, there's a whole gang of them, and they were out partying in Cicero. Capone had been drinking, and he decided he wanted to go run this one himself. So he gets his crew together, and he gets a Tommy gun, and he goes to find these O'Donnell guys. And on April 27, 1926, he gunned down William McSwiggan, James Doherty, and Thomas Red Duffy on the street. They pulled up in the car, machine gunned them, and they all died. They think that's one that Al Capone pulled the trigger on kind of randomly. Just decided one day, it's them, it's the O'Donnells, I'm going to get them. I'm going to do it myself. And Capone actually liked William McSwiggan, too.
That's why you don't get drunk and say, I'm taking point on this one. I'm going to go street sweep. Like, no, do the CEO thing like what Johnny T was trying to teach you.
No, he's like, no, we're going to gun down William McSwiggan in the middle of the street.
Yep.
That was one that even Capone was kind of like, damn, that was bad call.
Yeah.
We fucked up on that one.
Guys, don't let me drink anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So next time I'm like, hey, I'm pointing on this. I'm not pointing on that no more. I killed the goddamn assistant state's attorney.
And I like that, dude. So after 19 beers, you guys take my Tommy gun, okay? From now on, moving forward. We can't change the past.
1926, they decided we got to eliminate Jaime Weiss. And they had several failed hit attempts on him. So on August 10th, what's known as the Battle of the Standard Oil Building was an extended shootout on Michigan Avenue in the middle of the day. By the time it ends, as the police were pulling up, Schemer Drucci was on the running boards of a passerby's car with his gun on him, telling them to go chase down the other fucking car. And
You're giving directions now? You're giving goddamn directions?
I'm commandeering your vehicle, sir.
like the cops had to pull up and like, hey, stop stealing that car, Schemer Drucci.
Everybody knows you're just a damn schemer. Huh? Come on, man.
This 3-minute long gunfight was known as the Battle of Standard Oil Building. So 5 days later, the Southside Gang tried to kill Jaime Weiss and Schemer Drucci in virtually the exact same spot and failed again in another shootout where they jumped in the car and bounced back out.
It must be this corner we keep missing. Even with Tommy guns, we keep missing.
It's like a Detroit
What?
Lions 3rd and 5 play call
Exactly.
right there. Like, what, you running up the middle again? Come on, what do you mean? It's 3rd and 5.
It didn't
Right.
work the first time.
Wayne Fonts ain't going to call this next hit. I'm telling you.
The two shootouts are now referred to as the Battles of the Standard Oil Building. September 20th, a caravan of Northside Gang cars shot hundreds of rounds into the Hawthorne Hotel, where Capone was known to eat. So what they did was they came through the first time, and they just shot a bunch of rounds in basically to get everybody up and running around
moving.
and figuring out what's going on, and then drove off, and then followed up with more cars, thinking, oh, now he's going to be up by a window, and then shot it up again. It shot up the Hawthorne Inn. It's hundreds of bullets. Some people say thousands. They say it's probably physically impossible. Some people say it could be considered the first drive-by. But again, nobody got shot really bad. So Jack McGurn goes to Capone and he's like, man, there's a better way to do this. Like, you see how we just keep shooting everywhere and nobody dies? There's a better way to do it. Just give me a chance. I can take care of this. So Capone's like, cool. You can go ahead. Gave him to go ahead to hit Jaime Weiss.
You seen what happened last time I tried to take point on a hit.
Yeah.
Job.
I shot some kid.
I shot some dude I like. Fuck.
Jack McGurn puts in his plan to hit Jaime Weiss, and he takes a different approach. So he does surveillance, he uses patience, he sets up machine gun nests, so he rents places around Schofield's flower shop, which Jaime Weiss was still operating on the same base operations. Now, on October 11th, 1926, while crossing the street in front of the Schofield's flower store with a group of men, Jaime Weiss and another gangster were gunned down and killed. His bodyguard, his attorney, and there was a special investigator that was with him that worked for the attorney. They all got shot and wounded. So that's Jaime Weiss. That was him.
Finally hit the target.
So this is way more efficient. Al Capone's like, fuck yeah. And he makes Jack McGurn basically his field general. Jack McGurn, he starts like a street network. So that's another thing he believed in besides surveillance was intelligence. Through the years of 1927 and 1928, it resulted in the killings of anywhere from 5 to 12 out-of-town hitters that were getting brought in to try and take shots at Capone. And they could spot him like, hey, there's this guy, he's coming in town, he's a plumber, but he's got like wingtip shoes on with no plumbing equipment. This guy don't seem like a plumber. The guy get off the train and get fucking like strangled in the bathroom.
No shit.
Dude,
I shook his hands.
You
there was
watched
no
Game
calluses.
of Thrones?
Yeah.
How valuable was Master of Whispers?
In the 1927 mayoral election, Deaver lost. Previous mayor before him, Big Bill Thompson, gets voted back in.
Remember when Big Bill was around?
When your name's Big anything, like...
Big Bill the mayor is back in, and Capone gave him $250,000 to donate to his
And
fucking...
guess what? He ain't even getting no
damn
votes.
straight, dude, I was gonna say.
He's the mayor. He ain't getting no votes. How you like that? Like, okay.
I thought you were gonna say you're like when your name's Big Anything. I thought it was gonna be followed like you're open for business. Like that's just rolling into town
The
saying
bar
like I'm
is
ready
hot,
for you to
yeah.
buy me the fuck out. My name's Big motherfucking Bill.
Big Bill's in
I
the
don't
house.
take myself too. I don't take mayor of fucking Chicago. No, I don't take myself that seriously. I'm fucking Big Bill and shit.
You need a new Cadillac? You come see Big Bill. No, Uncle Al needs a mayor. Like, well, then Big Bill's your fucking mayor then. I don't care. What's it pay?
Remember before these gang wars when Big Bill was running shit? People were just getting paid off left and right. You guys want those days back?
That was cool. That was much quieter, right?
Yeah.
So Big Bill takes over in 1927. Al Capone leaves Cicero and moves back into Chicago.
Surprise, surprise. Big Bill paved the way for me.
He bought a spot at a hotel, set up shop in there, and that was his new spot.
Just like the Hawthorne over in the Cicerone, except a bigger, more luxurious. He's on the Miracle Mile now.
Al Capone, at this point, he bought a mansion that he would travel to often in Miami. He bought it from the Augustus Bush family. So here's the Capone Miami mansion.
Oh, okay. So beer like the Augustus Bush, like
Yes.
Bush.
Anheuser Busch.
Busch.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So man, beer. That just blows my mind, though. You know what I mean? Well, I guess
There's
I
some
shouldn't be that
irony there,
naive.
though. Like, you had the beer wars, the biggest. You guys made quality beer in Prohibition, and then you go buy. Yeah, I bought Busch Gardens back in 1920.
Yeah,
What's up,
that's
bitch?
a crib, man. Imagine having that place in the 20s.
Well, that's a crib now.
Well,
That's
that-
in 1920. That's like
Oh
Disneyland.
my God,
Like that's
man. And I was gonna say, forgive me, what was his wife's name again?
May.
Well,
May.
that's why May was loyal to the end right there, because she's
Look at this
walking
mansion in
around in
fucking
this,
Miami.
yeah,
Right.
like come on now.
I would drive to the
Nice.
Rock and see him. Like,
Yeah.
hey, how's Alcatraz going? Me and the pool cleaners got the pool real clean. Like,
She was driving to the Rock to bitch about something that was happening in
Right.
when are you getting out? That grass needs to be fucking cut. Shit.
Imagine
And
how
the
many.
bathroom upstairs in the 14th bathroom leaks.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Imagine how many titties were in that pool.
I was waiting for it. Thanks. Bet you there were some sexy titties in that pool.
I bet there was, though. Like, to this
Oh.
day,
Yeah.
Miami.
Miami, yeah.
You didn't get syphilis
famous
from licking
titties.
stamps. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Tell me some titties wasn't in the pool.
In 1928, he finds out his longtime friend and associate Frankie Yale was robbing his liquor shipments coming into New York.
People get greedy, right?
I mean, it was probably something that was happening for a long time. Maybe they just like you said, he just kept getting more greedy, like trying to steal more and more. You figure Capone would price some of that into the game a little bit, but I guess,
Yeah, you pay money to make money.
Yeah,
You throw
after-
money at money.
right on, man. After a while, too much ingredients start coming back on the fucking inventory sheet as missing, and you're wondering where the hell the pizzas are going. You know what I mean?
Right, everybody knows everybody's skimming and shit.
Right. A little extra.
Yeah.
So Al Capone thinks, like, well, it can't be Frankie Yale. So he sends in a guy, like, well, go check out Frankie and see if you think he's stealing our shipments. And the guy gets word back to him. He thinks Frankie is stealing the shipments, and then a day later gets shot in the on the corner in Brooklyn.
Okay. Confirmed.
Confirmation.
Right. That's like that droid at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. Did they fucking just... I don't know. You see anything? Yeah, Han Solo blew me up. Yep. We found him.
Yep. So who's heading to New York?
Yeah.
Who wants
Who's gonna handle Frankie?
Capone sends his favorite group of contract killers, the American Boys, led by Fred Killer Burke. American Boys go to Brooklyn to do this. They're not from Brooklyn. They're Midwest guys. They come from St. Louis. Capone sends with them Little New York, Louis Capena. So he sends his guy with them. I got a New York guy. He's going to go with you. While they're there, the American Boys, Killer Burke and his guys, they're professionals. They know what they're doing. Well, Louis Capena calls his girl from Brooklyn in Chicago. So on July 1st, 1928, Frankie Yale gets gunned down while he's driving his car down the street. So here's these Frankie Yale pictures.
Oh shit.
Fuck.
Frankie Yale was killed by a shot with a shotgun and shot by a Tommy gun. Now, when people see the scene, they always think, oh, a Tommy gun, you got shot up and stuff. He got shot 145 bullet. So they say Tommy guns have selectors. It's not the most efficient way to shoot a Tommy gun. Rapid fire is what it brings to the table. But Michigan State Police to this day have the gun that killed Frankie Yale.
Really?
Yeah. And it was also used in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But this was the first time that a Tommy gun was used in New York underworld. By now, Capone was living a lavish lifestyle. He wore custom suits tailored for him by Marshall Fields. You know, he always wanted the best entertainers, the best jazz musicians.
I've been running this shit since 26. I want to be entertained, and I want to be entertained when I want to be entertained.
He was one of the first mob bosses. First, he started off answering the press's questions. Then he started calling press conferences. So he'd be like, hey, I'll talk. If the press comes here, take them from this angle. You know what I mean? Not my bad side with the powder and shit, but, you know, I'll stand over here. And if you were down to play ball, Capone would meet with reporters and talk to them and shit. And he'd say shit like, hey, I'm just a businessman. I'm giving people what they want. Like,
beer sales.
He'd be wanted for a murder, and we know he did it. He'd come like, no, look, I didn't have nothing to do with this shit. Like, I'll tell you right now, I didn't have nothing to... Why you guys harassing me? Huh? You know what I'm saying? Why can't we just all have some clams, some
fake
beers?
News, get out of my press conference.
I love golf.
Fake.
Out of my press conference.
You're no longer a credible source.
I was on the call with O'Banion. It was a perfect phone call. Perfect phone call.
At this point, Schemer Drucci got killed by the police getting arrested. All the details are sketchy. It seems like he just kept fucking with the cops and it was a shootout. So some people say that he reached for the gun. Some say the cop was on the running boards when he shot him.
Either way,
Schemer Drucci was in the car.
The scheme ends here.
We cover a lot of we at least we think we cover a lot of firsts here on the podcast. That was the first ever he reached for my gun cop excuse and shit. He reached for my gun. I didn't have no choice and shit. His name was Schemer. Goddamn it!
I don't know if he was being for real or if he was just scheming me, but I was like, "Fuck, not taking no chances."
So now Bugs Moran takes over. He was a big O'Banion guy, and he's like, "Fuck Al Capone, man. Goddamn, we've been at this my whole goddamn life. He killed my first boss, then my new boss, and then Schemer Drucci
Sleeping in.
Don't forget Jaime. Don't forget Jaime. Shit.
So Bugs Moran's now in charge, and he's like, you know what? We're just gonna move into his territories. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna push in on Capone. We'll bring the fight to him.
We're gonna rob his trucks. We're gonna take his shit. Fuck him.
Good luck.
Bugs Moran starts chipping into his territories, causing a bunch of shit. And then the Gussenberg brothers, who were their top hitmen. Problem with the Gussenbergs is they're really cool. We'd like to cover them, but most of their story is a whole lot of drive-bys that didn't shoot nobody. Like that was, they shot a lot of bullets, and
that seems to be the thing with drive-bys. There's not really a bunch of efficient, like even if it's a paramilitary group or a gang, drive-bys just aren't an efficient because you're in a moving thing. Like it's just not an efficient way to kill.
Yeah, you're right. Even nowadays with the newer gun technology, it doesn't seem like that's an effective way to do it.
No, you get these handheld machine guns like a Uzi, Mac-10. and they drive by and they shoot up a lot of houses. And people do die, but
Usually not the intended target, too.
yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Like a 3-year-old 2 doors down died because the bullet went through 4 walls.
So anyways, Bugs Moran's moving in on the territories, and what he did do is he sends the Gussenbergs after Jack McGurn, like personally, and they hated him. They shot him up once where he got hit pretty hard. So even where the Gussenbergs couldn't kill him, what they did was they had him running for his life nonstop. So they were like shooting him up everywhere he went. One time he got out of court where he for sure couldn't have a gun.
Yeah.
And he leaves to get in a car, and they followed the car that he left the court in and shot it up around the corner from the court because they knew, okay, he doesn't have time to get a gun yet. At the same time, they're moving in, so Al Capone's like, what's our strategy? How do we move in? But the guy's Jack McGurn, and he's busy fucking running for his life because he's getting shot up wherever.
Yeah.
So now it's working. So Capone don't know what to do. He's like, fuck, we're losing.
Mm-hmm.
We just beat these motherfuckers' ass for like 5 years, and all of a sudden Bugs Moran's like, let's just start taking their shit, and it's working. So Jack McGurn says, hey, let me take care of it. So he's like, okay. Jack McGurn goes to work, and he puts together the plan. First thing he does, he gets Capone out of town. Capone goes to Miami, sets up shop at his mansion down there. Jack McGurn comes up with an elaborate plan. February 14th, 1929, while Al Capone's in Miami, 7 associates and members of the North Side Gang, including both of the Gussenbergs, were lined up along a wall and gunned down in what we now know as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
The greatest nip in the bud in gangster history.
Yes. Al Capone or Jack McGurn never got charged with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Nobody actually did. We believe that was another one done by the American boys. The one big mistake that was made is that Bugs Moran was not there. He was supposed to be there, but he was running late. But there was a dude, one of the guys that was there looked like him. It was Purple Gang. I don't know. It might have been Purple Gang guys that identified him, but they're from out of town, so they did surveillance, but they didn't know him personally. So Bugs Moran survives, and the Northside Gang survives, but they were never the power player they were after this. So with all that, community don't like it, press don't like it, even your political contacts that you paid off are like, whoa, that's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little too deep for me.
We can't do this. So everybody starts to turn on him.
That's why Torrio had the vision, man. You just had to stay with Torrio's vision, and you'd have been all good.
So everybody starts to distance themselves from Capone.
Feeling like he's on the ropes. Like, Capone's going to go down for this.
The murder twins, Albert Anselmi and John Scalise from earlier, say it's time to make a move. And shit, they used to work for the Jennas. Now they moved over to him and shit. And they're like, you know what? It's go time. He's weak. We can make a move now. So they start to put together a guy. They get Joseph Hot Toad Gunta on board. And he runs, he's high up at the Union Siciliano. But word gets back to Capone.
That network coming into play.
Master of Secrets.
Well, and when the people scheming against you are nicknamed the Murder Twins,
Yeah.
you got to get on that.
There's a
3 guesses at what they want to do to you. Murder.
We know who they're coming for after you. So, look, they're coming for you first. Can you, is there anything you can do about it before they get to us, or what?
Capone decides, he's like, you know what? I'm going to throw a big celebration celebrating that we beat the Northside Gang. We did it. We won. So he rented out a giant hotel in Hammond, Indiana.
Oh, Hammond. We've talked about that before on the podcast.
Chicago gangsters love Hammond, Indiana. So he's like, you know what? We're going to throw a huge party in Hammond. We won. And he invites both the Murder Twins and Gunta. While at the celebration, the conspirators were removed and viciously beat with baseball bats. They were found May 8th, 1929 on a road in Hammond, Indiana, beaten and shot. If you watch Untouchables, it shows Robert De Niro as Al Capone beating the guys with a bat. And that's a common story that goes around. It's in a bunch of books. But it seemed like Al Capone doing it himself at the table was originally, it got printed as a story in the paper as an editorial, and people ran with it. And Chicago gangsters didn't deny it because it gave Al Capone more of a
Lore.
Now he's this big fat fucking weirdo that's having press conferences and doesn't want you to look at his left side and shit. So they're like, oh yeah, he did it. Yeah, he beat you with a fucking bat. You better pay attention to the fucking boss. You hear that? So the gangsters seemed willing to go with it, which right off the bat should tell you
It's bullshit.
it's
Yeah, because, I mean, when are they ever doing that?
yeah.
I just pled the fifth 27 times
if
last
it was
Thursday.
real, there would be a lot more
Yeah.
denial. Like, no, he wouldn't do nothing like that.
Richard Lindbergh, who's a Chicago historian and author, he's wrote several books about Al Capone, and he has Tony Accardo as beating the guys with bats, and they still didn't do it at the table. They had them there to get them drinking and relaxed, and then snatched them out from the table.
Took them out back.
Well, I mean, you're already trying to keep shit under wraps. We all know that Tony Accardo's nickname is Joe Batters.
Yeah, I was gonna say you get hit with a motherfucking bat in Indiana if you're around Joey Bats and shit.
Yeah. It's not a coincidence. His name's Joey Batters. So in the bad guy universe, Tony Accardo beat these guys with a bat. Richard Lindbergh agrees. But either way, most historians will give Al Capone those three.
It's a great scene in the movie.
It is a great scene in the movie. After this, Al left for Miami, where he spent time with Lucky Luciano and Ciro Terranova at his house. And then he goes to Atlantic City from May 12th to May 15th, 1929. And this turns into what's called like a gangster summit of sorts. And it kind of is to address the violence in Chicago. They had gangsters of all race, like Dutch Schultz, Irish gangsters. They had gangsters from Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, Kansas City. They brought in the top guys from the
It's
families.
the United Nations of
Yeah.
the mob.
And most of the meeting was to settle down Chicago and figure out how to work out these deals. Capone and Bugs Moran had a big beef over dog racing tracks. The meeting in 1929, at the time, Lucky Luciano threw that meeting, he was only a lieutenant because he didn't move up to boss status till later.
You see the writing on the wall. Like, Lucky was like an organizer.
And most of the story was about, like, hey, Chicago, settle down. And that's what they kept saying. Like, look, we're in New York and we're doing our own thing, but you shot 7 people in Chicago, and now they're like, now we got to raid everybody's brothel.
Well,
You
now
know,
the
like,
whole
what do you-
public, what Lucky's saying too, the whole public turned against you. When you get the whole world looking at you and we're doing illegal shit, we're trying to be under the radar, stop. And then you guys are at this fucking worldwide meeting and you're talking about like, yeah, but the Greyhound track, bro. This motherfucker's digging into 20 grand. Like, hey, my dude, the fuck are we talking about here?
You're mad
Talking
at-
about a global fucking black hand enterprise. And you two fucktards are talking about a Greyhound race.
Al Capone basically agrees that they need to settle shit down in Chicago. It's bad for business, and he tells them he's with them, he's not going to cause no more trouble, we're going to settle shit down. The next day, he takes a train en route to Chicago from New Jersey to Philadelphia. The next day, on May 16th, Al Capone was arrested in Philadelphia for carrying a concealed weapon. He was sentenced to a year in prison with his bodyguard, who's also charged, and spent the time in Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, we actually covered recently Eastern State Penitentiary, but Eastern State Penitentiary is a fucking dungeon. It's now a historical site, but it's a fucking dungeon.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
it's
Leavenworth
It
times
looked like
10.
some medieval
it's so
shit,
worth,
right?
yeah. It's like, yeah, because it used to be like a fort. It's a fucking sick place. Well, here was, this is the Al Capone cell at Eastern State Penitentiary.
Wow. That's high zoot for a prison, man. I mean, I know you're Al
Well,
Capone,
1920s
but
too.
goddamn.
Yeah.
I remember going to jail in my time ill spent, and I had a piece of thing hanging off the side of the wall and a little shitty blanket. My man's got like a writing table, like a sitting chair.
When you go home to your house right now, your bedroom probably has a ceiling light, maybe a lamp, but not a lamp, this light. Like,
You're right.
this is 1920s lav,
Yeah.
you know, like this
Well,
is
not
lavish
every-
for like a house, like a decor lamp.
So he took his year. Now, this is real controversial. Some people say he set himself up to take himself off the streets,
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, yeah.
to cool everything down.
It was the safer alternative for him.
Well, because he was known not to carry at this point. You know, he didn't have to, so he didn't usually carry. People in Philly didn't get a lot of time for carrying guns. You know, he was actually the first person in Philadelphia convicted of carrying concealed charge, or in prison for carrying concealed charge. Most people were usually fined for it.
The last one I listened to was like, well, I can do 18 months standing on my head. I think I could do 18 months standing on my head if I was in that cell too.
So Al Capone gets sentenced to a year. He does 10 months. He gets 2 months off with good behavior. And in March 1930, he was
My
released.
ass he does.
March 1930, he's out. He was immediately labeled Chicago's public enemy #1. So he says, wow, there's a lot of heat. Fuck Chicago. I'm going to go to Miami. And in April 1930, he was arrested in Miami for vagrancy.
Vagrancy is like if you're a homeless dude living behind the party store in a box.
Yeah.
If you own a mansion in Miami and you're down in your mansion in Miami and they still get you at vagrancy, like, there's something afoot here.
The SIF was really getting to him.
Yes.
He had all this money and he was hanging out behind buildings yelling at cats and shit.
He didn't know he owned a mansion.
So he goes back to Chicago, and then he gets grand jury charges. Like, they bring him in for something, and he says he's too sick to come in, and then they accuse him of contempt for lying. They just start fucking with him, like, all the time, anything they can. The same shit he's been doing his whole life, but now they're like,
It's
no,
not
fuck
working.
you, Al Capone.
Right.
Fuck you. We're done with your bullshit. Like, the kid that been bullied forever is, like, picking back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fuck you.
Fuck you, I'm a cop now.
Al Capone starts trying to repair his public image, because even the public's like, fuck you, Al Capone. He puts together a soup kitchen in the first ward. Now, the reason he actually put together a soup kitchen, because that's a big thing, right? Al Capone with the soup kitchen.
Yeah.
You know? And they put it all in the newspapers.
That was a good one up north, too.
Yeah.
Giving back to the community.
Yeah. Well, the real reason they even set up the soup kitchen at all is Chicago's a big city, and now we're in the Great Depression, and people are poor, so they're, like, flocking to the city. And people that were from out of town were coming and going to the soup kitchen. So they're like, we want to try and put together a spot for these poorer people to go to. And a guy wanted to do it that was like a local politician. He's like, yeah, but I can't put my name on it. So Al Capone took it over, and they said, well, look, it's going to be like $100 a day. And Al Capone was like, bam, I got it. You know what? Slap my name on it. So they put together the Al Capone soup kitchen. But in reality, he only agreed because they were going to put it up anyways. And it just cost him $100 a day. Despite his soup kitchen, the heat just keeps piling on him. At this point, there's a gangster named Joey Aiello who decides he wants to lay claim to the Janet brothers' old territory, Little Italy, and he wants a spot on the Union Siciliano. So he's always a Union guy, and he's like, you know what? I want the Union, and I want our old territory, and I want it fucking now. So Al Capone's like, well, fuck.
I guess I
Yeah. I can see how this is going to happen.
So now that the Gussenbergs are gone, Jack McGurn's got some time on his hands.
Yeah. I'm not running no more.
He sets up an operation, and on October 23rd, 1930, Joey Aiello was gunned down, pulling up in a street from machine gun nested locations at an elevated position in classic Jack McGurn style. What's crazy about the Joey Aiello one was he tried to get away, so he got out the car, and he got lit up, and he ran around a corner. And what he didn't know was that was where the bigger machine nest was.
Oh.
And he turned the corner, and they opened up on him. Legend has it, the doctors took a pound of bullets out of his body.
Oh, shit.
And there was 3 more pounds inside that they couldn't get to.
With the murder of Joey Aiello, Capone consolidated all of the Italian organized crime in Chicago.
He has to at this point, right? I mean, he tried to do the separate and do your own thing and contribute to a whole, but too many attempts on his crew and his life, man. I mean, they had McGurn running for a while. They got him running for years now. I'm with them. You got to bring it in, whether by default or by purpose.
In 1931, when Lucky Luciano put together the commission of the National Crime Syndicate, the commission was headed by the heads of the 5 families, the Chicago outfit represented by Al Capone, and then the Buffalo family.
And Buffalo, just because it was the proximity to the border, is that what it is?
Well, this guy, Magadano, was kind of a badass.
Okay, all right.
So he started from New York and branched out to Buffalo.
All right.
So Al Capone's part of the National Commission, but everything's closing in on him. You just don't have the respect you used to. When you don't have the community, you don't have the political connection, that's what always set them apart. The federal government had increased their investigations on him after the Muskegon murder.
Yeah.
So this is when they put the fucking the Elliot Ness, the Untouchables groups. So they're like, hey, go find something. And they ended up eventually charging him with 5,000 prohibition violations. Now they threw that out because the federal charge superseded that. But Elliot Ness did charge him with 5,000 prohibition charges. On March 13th, 1931, Al Capone was officially charged with tax evasion.
And that's what sank his battleship.
Now, Al Capone was fine with it going into it. Jake Guzik had got hit with tax evasion. Ralph Capone had got hit with it. You know, a lot of these guys did a couple of years. He was prepared. He had all the money. He could play back taxes. And they did some jury tampering. But there was this judge that was about to run against Big Bill. So he's like, you know what? This is where I'm going to make my bones. Is I'm going to put away fucking Al Capone and shit.
Mhm.
Okay.
So Al Capone shows up. He has the jury. At the last minute, they're like, you know what? We're going to replace the jury with the backup jury we had waiting and shit.
Oh, boom, boom, boom.
So Al Capone works out a plea deal. We'll give you a plea deal. We'll pay this much in back taxes, and I'll do 2.5 years in prison. And they're like, bam. It's a fucking great deal. We'll do it. Let's go. So they run it out there, and they get in front of the judge, and they're like, this is the deal. And the judge says, nope, I'm not going to accept the plea deal. If he's found guilty, he's got to do every year he's convicted of. Now his defense team doesn't have anything prepared, really, because they thought they had this plea deal worked out. So now they got to scramble and they got to come up with these appeals, and they're like, well, then we got to now we got to recall our plea deal because we didn't mean that, because you're not going to accept it, blah blah. And they try to throw together defense, and they fucking lose, and they hit Al Capone with 11 years.
Damn.
Yep.
To that time was unheard of. The most anybody had ever did on tax evasion was 3 years.
So was that like the max you could get or something for tax evasion? Was 11?
Yeah.
Damn. I bet at that point there had been people who did more time for shooting people and killing them than that.
Al Capone was fucking crushed.
Yeah.
So he was ready to go to prison for a little bit. He thought he'd get off. Then he thought, like, well, I could do a couple of years. I could do whatever. And they're like, 11 years. You're going away.
For you to be crushed, though, like, you're only getting 11 years, motherfucker. They could have gave you life for all the shit that they know that you did,
Right,
they just
if you
can't
were really
prove.
fucking prison.
Right.
On October 17th, 1931, he was sentenced to 11 years. Capone arrived at Atlanta USP in May 1932 at age 33. On his entry physical, he was listed at 250 pounds and was suffering from syphilis and gonorrhea.
Ouch.
I forgot to mention, when he was in prison this last time in 1929, they had to do surgery on a sinus canal. So yeah, he's fat and he's got gonorrhea and syphilis and shit, and he's
Can't
all fucked
breathe.
up and shit.
That's a hard 33, man.
Yeah.
And that's a wild ass 7 years, you know? From the promotion to now, man, damn. That's at least a 52-year-old, 32-year-old, right? 33-year-old.
So he goes to prison. He's having a rough time. He met up with another guy that used to be a low-level associate for the Chicago outfit, and he seen Capone and seen he was really struggling. He just didn't have it anymore, really. He wasn't very street, and you know, these guys were fucking with him and shit, so he kind of like jumped on board, like, hey, I got your back, and was watching out for him. And Capone didn't have it very good in Atlanta USP, but just the fact that his boys started watching his back, a lot of people started complaining and say he was getting preferential treatment. And as soon as the government heard, like, yeah, Al Capone's getting preferential treatment, so they picture, like, oh, he's got another fucking suite put together. And in August of 1934, he was transferred to Alcatraz maximum security prison in San Francisco.
America's like, man, this shit's been going on. You know, we went through the mob shit through all the prohibition, and now it's over. We need to start fucking hammering home points. We're sending this dude to the Rock. We're gonna make an example out of this dude.
Well, I've probably said this a lot. At some point around here, it switched from the gangsters who were the romantic guys to the untouchables. Elliot Ness is the fucking guy. You know, so it used to be, it's cops and robbers, but you used to root for the robbers, right? And you got James Cagney, like, hey, you see, you know, but then at some point you're like, we like the cops now. Al Capone caught himself in we don't like the bad guy phase no more.
And Elliot Ness and all those, like the cops and feds, get all the love and the new noir love and all that, but it was really the IRS, nothing to do with Elliot. Even though those 5,000 charges came, the IRS is what fucking put him away.
But they sent him to the fucking Rock, and Al Capone's not really made for that shit. He was a good prisoner. He wasn't much of a gangster no more. Like, I mean, he was, but he was a leader, not a fighter. And on June 23rd, 1936, he was attacked and stabbed by Texas bank robber James Lucas. He was able to fight off Lucas and was not seriously injured, even though he stabbed up. I think that's one of the things, like, it's the last to go, you know?
Oh yeah, man.
You know?
I mean, and even in like regular ass, society, you don't want to mess with the crazy motherfucker in the alley, man, because I mean, at the end of the day, he's gonna be able to fight to the death, you know.
Yeah.
While in Alcatraz, Al Capone's cognitive decline became obvious. He spent his last year at Alcatraz in a hospital unit and was transferred to Terminal Island in California in January 6, 1939. Once he got there, his wife May appeared in court to speak to his reduced mental capabilities, and he was released on parole on November 16, 1939. After he gets released from federal prison, he goes straight to Union Memorial Hospital in Baltimore. He actually first went to John Hopkins. Is it John Hopkins or Josh Hopkins?
John Hopkins.
Yeah. They refused him.
Hmm.
So he ended up at Union Memorial Hospital in Baltimore, which is also a really good
They
hospital.
take a fucking creed, like the fucking judges and like you can't refuse them because you're against his morals.
You're not supposed to refuse anybody.
Isn't that like a Hippocratic oath? Isn't that what it's
Yeah,
called? Like you have to
exactly.
take care of this dude. But they're like, no, fuck him. So he goes to Union Memorial. He gets treated for paresis. That's basically advanced stage mental
Dementia.
illness from advanced syphilis. One thing we didn't cover much was a lot of stories portray Al Capone as having done a lot of coke. And then he goes to prison and he's a cokehead. Now, where most of that comes from, a guy did a book, and in the book, when he was checked in, he had advanced holes in his septums, which they contributed to having a coke addiction. There's really nothing in Al Capone's story to show that he ever did coke, except for the holes in his septums. And the second leading cause of holes in your septum, besides cocaine use, is advanced stage syphilis.
Okay.
And he's also had issues with his nose
Right.
since he
His
was
whole
a
life.
fucking little kid.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Part of me was gonna say, well, he's good at hiding shit from stuff. I mean, like, he somehow stayed married even though he had like a hooker addiction to the point of syphilis. So maybe he just hid his coke addiction too. But that makes sense. He's had the sinus problems his whole life and the syphilis problems his whole life.
well, and the other thing that at that point people weren't sniffing a lot of coke.
Nope.
The coke was a lot more liquid form that you were drinking.
In your
Like they-
Coca-Cola,
yeah.
in your like medicine, like bottles,
Like an
morphine.
opium style,
Like the
morphine
good old
and shit.
coke, not this
Yeah.
cut up fucking you sniff it through your nose coke. The
Plus
straight
the person,
liquid
like
coke.
being a good business sense, like even though he had his wild side and beat people to death, all that, he had a real good business sense, and that's not conducive to a cokehead. Like so like what he's saying, and it makes sense. None of the other 90% of the story is conducive to him being a cokehead. So
Gotcha.
It seems
he
weird
had-
that would sneak
he
in like
had
that.
syphilis, and the second leading cause of that, the holes there, were syphilis. The evidence, if we were judges, like if this was a courtroom, like you got to go against. No, none of us can say definitively he didn't sniff cocaine, but like he pointed out, it wasn't a big sniff thing. It wasn't the 80s
I'm not
disco era.
I'm sure there was still
But
powder cocaine
yes,
out
there
at the
was.
time, but it wasn't the way people did it.
Right.
Like
Gotcha.
you wouldn't buy cocaine.
That's a
like
fairly
that.
new thing. Like that's your late 50s, early 60s, where it became refined and cut up and made the powder form. Because the old Incans, like they would chew on the coca leaves, and like all that was prevalent all the way through the 40s.
People smoked and chewed drugs for generations, and then all of a sudden our grandparents decided to start sniffing them and shooting them
And
up.
freebasing.
Just straight to the veins. Let me shoot this.
He eventually, March 20th, 1940, checks out of the hospital and he moves to Palm Island, Florida, which is now like a private island. In 1942, penicillin becomes readily available. He was one of the first patients. Now, it was way too late to reverse the effects, but it slowed the progression he was able to maintain. And he spent most of his life in Florida with his wife and grandkids. He'd sometimes get like visits from old friends and shit, and he'd just hang out with them. He's in Florida, like partying and
Hey,
shit.
remember when we shot up that building? Hey, nobody died, but we 5,000 bullets.
We wasted some bullets.
People say when he got out of prison, he had the mentality of a 12-year-old. They talk about dementia. There's the new Tom Hardy movie that's out where it has him like shooting a machine gun with a diaper. But in reality, when he was released, when they said like the temperament of a 12-year-old, they said temperament. So they never said the intelligence of a 12-year-old. They said the temperament. So he had receded a little bit, and you know what I mean? He's a calmer dude. But But at the end of the day, even 12-year-olds, you see a lot of 12-year-olds like shooting machine guns in diapers and shit. You know, even 12-year-olds kind of have a grip on what's going on in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? He did have mental issues. He had a lot of real bad health issues. But a lot of the mental stuff that they say, it seems to be kind of overblown. Now, one of the big ones we get is pictures of him fishing in his pool, right? They were taken in 1930. He was in his robe. He took pictures on his boat and on his dock to try and show that he was like a regular dude.
Smoking a cigar and on my robe.
So these are pictures of Al Capone in 1941. This one is a month before he died. So he's not wearing a lot of diapers.
Maybe that was a point in our time where they realized the power of propaganda and media.
And I will say, if you look at that bottom picture, he's got a fucking fupa like a motherfucker, though.
Yeah, you could tell, man, he's loving the sun and just
pasta.
enjoying the life down in Florida. And that seems to be what like people do in Florida at the retirement ages, man. Just kind of live it up and let it
You
roll.
golf
right?
and eat pasta.
That joke, it's Florida's Michigan's Bahamas. I guess it's Chicago and Illinois' Bahamas too.
Oh, the whole Midwest Bahamas.
Damn straight. You go, Al. I mean, it's wild though, just to think about. Like, I mean, even if the public turns back on you, like you guys, we all quoted earlier, the world turns their back on you, and somehow you're still able to ride out into the sunset down in sunny, warm Florida. You know what I mean? Like,
Chilling with your kid. That's his kid right there.
And
That
he's
bottom
not at a
picture.
motel. He's
on the
he
left.
owns a mansion
right
down
on.
there.
May's still with him. Right
Yeah.
on, man.
On January 21st, 1947, he suffered a stroke. And then he caught pneumonia. And then while he was recovering from pneumonia, on January 25th, he had a heart attack.
Damn. All right.
So it was meant to be.
It was
Like,
compounded.
That's a fucking...
Is this time?
That's a trifecta. Al Capone died in his house surrounded by his family. Died at 48 years old.
He certainly don't look 48.
Well, you know, we've talked about it on the show before, man. The 48 in 1941
Damn, man.
is a harder 48
Yeah.
than 48 in 2021.
Holy shit.
I mean, you know, just like you said, what I think it was Luciano got syphilis and just had it treated, and Al was like, no, fuck that shit, I'm not getting it treated. I mean, there's a reason why. Maybe he didn't trust the way they were going to treat it. They didn't trust modern medicine. Who knows?
Well, late in the stages, the penicillin treatment came out.
Yeah.
When Lucky got it, penicillin had been out for 7 to 10 years. You know what I mean? So like it was.
Oh, okay. I
So
thought it
when
was around the same time. All right.
No, Lucky
'Cause I was like,
Luciano-
I
no,
wouldn't
Lucky
wanna-
Luciano had to do fucking, because before penicillin, he had to do mercury treatments where they
Oh.
shove that shit up your fucking cock.
Well, that's what I
Shove
was
it in the
just
fist
about
hole.
to say. As I wouldn't want no dick hole injections
Yeah, so
either.
they take that shit up fucking right up there.
Yeah,
shove
I
that
think
mercury
maybe
up
if
there,
I
shit.
was Al, I might have been saying fuck that
Yeah.
as well. you
Yeah.
know?
It's like, I'll just fucking just keep grossing around
Yeah.
for the rest of my life.
Like I can fist fight.
I can
dudes
fish in
and-
my pool. I can fish in my goddamn pool.
Is
Fuck you
anything-
guys.
Is my life really that bad? I took it over at 26. By 31, I'm flying people across the country to entertain me. Like I don't need no treatments. Like it's straight, man.
I mean, if that was the case, though, you could just go jump in the Detroit River, right?
Yeah, something.
Yeah. Get some mercury on my pee hole.
Jesus.
Al Capone is currently buried in Mount Carmel Cemetery in Hillsdale, Illinois.
All right, so Illinois is always home to Al. Gotcha, man.
So that's the story of Al Capone.
So say good night to the bad guy. Go on. The last time you're gonna see a bad guy like this again, let me tell you.
Now, this is normally where we would have not known a picture and
Right.
have never seen him before and
Right.
shit. But obviously we've all seen pictures of Al Capone, and we would try to pick someone that would play him in a movie. But I got a list here, and I won't read the whole list, but like just a quick hits of actors that have played Al Capone. It's Ben Gazzara, Robert De Niro, Eric Roberts, Titus Welliver, William Forsythe, John Bernthal, Stephen Graham, Milo Gibson, and Tom Hardy. And that's That's not all of them. That's
The bigger ones.
that's some of the guys.
When you read that list, that was the who's who of guys that I would not pick to play Al Capone.
Right.
And just the two bigger ones, like the biggest ones in that list, like your Tom Hardy or Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro can play any other gangster in the world except.
Well, he got fat for it. and fucking-
No, and not to say he didn't look the part, so to
All right.
speak.
Well, who's your guy then?
That could play him.
Yeah.
He plays more. He's a comedian, but John Lovitz.
My favorite, and I know he didn't get a lot of time on screen to play Capone, was the guy who played him on Boardwalk Empire.
Stephen Graham.
And for some reason I think like he just captured like Al Capone's like personality maybe a little bit more how I always like imagined it in my mind. I haven't seen the Tom Hardy one though, and I'm a big Tom Hardy fan, so I'm sure that'll sway me a little bit. But just like looks wise, like I know he wasn't as Italian looking as he might have needed to be, But anyways, I thought he did a good job.
I recently watched Boardwalk Empire, and Stephen Graham. He's a little small. I think that would be my bigger problem. He's a little small, but I think besides that, he did a great job.
It's a genuine take on him.
He did the coke thing, but that's not him. He's an actor. He's just got to play whatever they put
write
in front
the
of
script.
him. So, but I think Stephen Graham did really well. So we can't really do a DEFCON scale, but now that you've heard a story of him, when you say Al Capone, would you say, as far as the legend Al Capone, would you say he lived up to it, he was overrated, or underrated?
I'll say he lived up to it.
I'd say he lived up to it.
Yeah, definitely.
There's some facts that I think we all agree it kind of comes across in this episode, but
Been badass since he was 10.
The buying turkeys and all that, like some of it was advantageous, but like as a businessman, you would want to be advantageous or whatever. Like I don't think it was fake.
Yeah.
He killed with no problem, ordered kills with no problem, killed from the heart. Like he was a good dude.
Kill from the heart? Is that a rating? we're gonna rate people on killed. He killed from the heart. No, he.
Well, some people kill just because
fuck
that's
you.
the
You're cut
business
off,
they're
man.
in.
You started a new rating scale of who kills from the heart or not. DEFCON 2.
DEFCON 2.
Yeah, I mean he's killing, but did he mean it?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Was he coming from a good place? Like, was his intentions like there? Like, yeah.
I mean, I think he lived up. I mean, like what I agree with what Jay says, and I also always put Capone as that first flashy, flaunty gangster.
Now he did have a short reign, and he technically didn't build anything, inherited his shit. But it was also wartime, it's chaos. I think he's just a scrappy dude.
Mm-hmm.
I think Al Capone is the perfect example of a match. It burns hot, but it's quick.
Oh.
All right. Well, before we go, you guys got anything?
KBS is pretty freaking good.
Yeah, that's gonna be a return champion.
Yeah, man, we're recording right before the holiday season, the Christmas holiday season. Just everybody take care of your families and have a good holiday.
Amen.
All right. This is Say Hello to the Bad Guy. Thanks for coming, and thanks for listening.